The heat arrived before the light. Even in darkness, the plain radiated warmth left over from the day before, a slow, steady exhale from cracked earth that hadn't felt water in months. When the first pale line of dawn touched the horizon, it revealed a landscape made of dust, low, fragile ridges of dirt, shaped by wind and nothing else. A stallion stepped into that light. His coat, once rich and deep in color, had faded beneath a layer of fine powder. The muscles along his shoulders moved beneath the skin in smooth, powerful waves, but his steps were cautious now, measured, deliberate. The ground beneath him crumbled easily. Hoofprints vanished behind him as the wind filled each depression almost instantly with loose grit. The air carried no scent, no moisture, no promise. The stallion lifted his head to test the wind regardless. His ears tightened forward. He tasted only dryness, sun-baked stone, dead roots, the memory of grass. But instinct insisted he keep searching. He walked toward a shallow rise, the light growing stronger behind him. His mane brushed against his neck with each step, brittle from the relentless sun. Occasionally he paused, lowering his head to inspect a patch of dirt that looked darker than the rest. And each time, he found nothing beneath the surface but more dust. The plain stretched endlessly, empty and unhelpful, a world that had forgotten how to give. He stopped at the top of the rise and looked out across the land. The horizon shimmered faintly, not with water but with heat. A blur, a lie. The stallion snorted once, shaking dust from his nostrils. The sound felt too loud for this place, a place that seemed designed to absorb every voice. He moved again, hooves tapping lightly against stones that cracked like old pottery. In the distance, a lone thorn bush clung to life, twisted branches holding a few dry leaves as if refusing to believe what the plain had become. The stallion passed by without slowing. He had known greener days. He carried the memory of shade, the cool kind, where insects hummed quietly and grass brushed against the belly. But memories do not fill the mouth or soften the earth. After a time, minutes or hours, the plain did not allow one to know, he stopped again. His flanks rose and fell with slow breaths. He lowered his head, sniffed the soil, and scraped it gently with one hoof. Still dry. Still empty. He exhaled, and a cloud of dust rose from the ground, drifting away on the faintest suggestion of wind. The sun finally broke over the horizon, washing the plain in harsh brightness. The stallion squinted and turned slightly, angling his path toward a distant dip in the land, a place where water might have collected once long ago. There were no tracks to follow, no sounds to guide him, only instinct and the silent demand to keep moving. The stallion lifted his head high, ears alert to a silence so thick it felt like weight. Then he walked on, the only living motion across a plain that had forgotten what it meant to nourish anything at all. By midday, the sun stood high and sharp above the plain, its heat wobbling in waves across the open distance. The stallion's shadow clung tightly to his body, small and dark, as if the sun were trying to erase every outline that didn't belong to the sky. His pace had slowed. Each step kicked up a thin puff of dust that settled quickly behind him. His sides rose and fell with deeper effort. The dry taste in his mouth had become a steady ache. Then he stopped. A shift in the wind. Faint, brief, but enough to make him lift his head sharply, ears turning forward. There was scent now, barely anything at first. Just a thin hint of moisture, the cold memory of water carried through heat as if confused by its own purpose. The stallion snorted, and the sound cracked the silence like a dropped stone. He turned toward the west. Far on the horizon, something gathered in the sky. A small shape, darker than the blue behind it. A lone cloud drifting with slow hesitation. It was no storm yet, not even a promise, but it existed, and that was more than the plain had offered in a long time. The stallion watched it for a long moment. Clouds had passed before, high, bright, indifferent, leaving nothing behind. But this one looked heavier. This one carried weight. He began moving again, quicker now, driven by instinct older than the drought itself. The cloud drifted closer. Not fast. Clouds rarely rush. But every slow change in its shape meant possibility. The air around the stallion cooled slightly, enough to lift the sweatless skin along his neck. The land changed with it. Where the soil had been gray, It now bore hints of brown, as if the color returned first, before any real water. A few hardy flies buzzed near his flank, drawn by the warming scent of life, his life, moving through a place that had nearly forgotten movement. The stallion walked with his head higher, nostrils flared. Every breath tasted different now. Less dust, more expectation. He crested another roll of land and stopped. Below, the plain dipped into a shallow basin, flat and barren. But, at the very center, the dirt was darker, a circle of earth that seemed ready, waiting for the first drop. The stallion descended the slope, hooves slipping slightly in softening soil. The wind brushed his mane, a breath from somewhere far away. The cloud above seemed unsure whether to drift on or stay. Its edges dissolved and reformed slowly, as if making up its mind. The stallion lowered his head toward the earth, though there was still nothing to drink. He exhaled, and his warm breath spread across the ground, disturbing grains of soil that clung together in anticipation. The plain held still. The air held still. Even time paused, as though listening for the moment something, anything, would change. The stallion looked up once more. The cloud had grown larger, darker, committed. For the first time in many days, the plain smelled like rain. The first sign of rain wasn't sound, it was temperature. A cool thread of air slipped across the stallion's back, cutting through the heat that had clung to him for days. His skin shivered, muscles twitching instinctively beneath his coat. He lifted his head, ears forward, eyes fixed on the darkened patch of sky now directly above the basin. The cloud had stopped drifting. It hovered, heavy, low, purposeful. The stallion took a few steps forward and lowered his muzzle toward the dark soil again, as if the earth itself might offer confirmation. He sniffed. Moisture. Faint, but real. He exhaled sharply, hope pushing through exhaustion. Then it happened. A single drop fell, striking the ground just inches from his hoof. It left a perfect circle of darker color in the dust. The soil drank it instantly, leaving only a faint mark where change had begun. The stallion jerked his head up, nostrils flaring. His ears turned sharply, straining for the next sign. Another drop. This one landed on his muzzle, cold enough to shock. It streaked down, carving a line through the dust on his face before falling to the ground. He stood perfectly still. The third drop fell slowly, as if the sky were practicing. Then a fourth, a fifth. Soft taps against his shoulders and neck, each one leaving a cool trace. The sound was small at first, a quiet pattern against dry earth, but in a place so long starved of motion, it felt monumental. The soil responded immediately. Cracks softened. Dust clumped. The plain exhaled a deep, silent breath. The stallion's coat grew speckled with dark spots that spread and merged into wet patches. His mane pressed closer to his neck, strands heavy with the weight of water. He closed his eyes for a moment. He let the rain find every part of him. His breathing steadied, slower, deeper, as though his body remembered how relief was supposed to feel. More drops came. Not many, not fast, but steady enough that each one was a promise. The plain began to change in subtle ways. Scents rising from earth that hadn't been stirred in months. The smell of green not yet born. The smell of roots waking under soil. The smell of old life preparing to return. The stallion stepped forward and lowered his head, waiting for the puddles to form. But the thirsty ground swallowed each drop greedily, refusing to share. Not yet, but soon. The rain increased, still gentle but more confident. The sound became easier to hear, a scattered rhythm tapping lightly against the stallion's back and mane, like fingers testing a drum that had been silent too long. He turned his head skyward. The cloud was growing darker at its heart. The first thin strands of falling water blurred the edges of the horizon. The stallion blinked slowly, water clinging to his eyelashes. He took another breath. The rain was here, real, undeniable. And though it was too early for the plain to celebrate, the wind carried a message across the open ground. Change has begun. The rain did not rush. It chose its pace carefully, as if feeling its way back into a world that had nearly forgotten how to receive it. Droplets scattered across the basin floor, soaking inch by inch into the loosened dirt. The stallion watched the ground closely, waiting for a sign that the earth had taken enough. Eventually, the water stopped disappearing. Where it fell, it began to gather. A thin sheen formed over the lowest part of the basin, reflective, unbroken. The soil there had softened to the point where it could no longer drink, and the rain rewarded it with a shallow pool. The stallion stepped closer. His hooves sank slightly with a soft, satisfying squelch, a sound the plain had not heard in too long. He lowered his head, ears twitching at the unfamiliar noise. The puddle grew, slow but steady. Rainwater slid into it from every side, guided by the natural curve of the land. The surface smoothed itself until it became a clear, dark mirror. The stallion stared into it. His reflection looked distorted at first, ripples stretching his muzzle into odd shapes. But as the water settled between drops, the image sharpened. Dust, streaks on his face, wet clumps of fur along his neck. Eyes tired but still alert. It might have been the first time in weeks he'd seen himself recognizable as a horse, and not just a shape dragging across a dead world. He lowered his muzzle toward the surface, nostrils barely touching the cool skin of the water. A scent rose, something new beneath the dryness, freshness. He drank cautiously. The water was colder than expected, clean in the way only rain can be. It slid down his throat, easing the dryness that had become normal. He drank again, deeper this time, until the ache in his mouth softened. When he lifted his head, a drop clung to his chin before breaking free, falling back into its source. The rings spread outward, distorting the reflection of the sky in his face. The rain thickened, not a downpour, just enough to make the puddle widen, enough to wash dust from the stallion's coat in thin streams. The plain around him was changing. The smell of earth deepened. The air felt heavier, full of something alive. The wind, which had been content to wander aimlessly, now followed the scent of water as though it remembered its purpose. Behind the stallion, the ground grew darker in patches where the rain soaked deeper. The faintest hint of green clung to stubborn roots, ready to leap forward if given the chance. He took another mouthful, and another. Then he stopped and simply breathed, nose near the surface, eyes half closed, as though anchoring himself to the world through this tiny pool. The rain continued, patient, steady. The mirror of water held his reflection and the beginning of a new sky. For the first time in a long while, the plain had something worth holding on to. The rain kept falling, soft, constant, determined. Each drop found a crack, a root, a forgotten seed hidden just below the surface. Slowly, the plain began to respond. Where the water had collected deepest, small bubbles rose from the earth, pockets of trapped air escaping as soil loosened. The sound was faint, but real. The kind of sound that only happens when the world begins breathing again. The stallion stepped back from the widening pool, his hooves pressed into mud now, not dust, leaving prints that held their shape instead of collapsing. Water collected in them, shimmering faintly, proof that the ground could still remember softness. Around him, the color of the land shifted. The dark of soaked soil spread outward like ink, replacing the dull gray of drought. In places, thin threads of green, tiny blades of grass, unfurled cautiously through the damp crust, each one trembling under the weight of raindrops. The stallion watched them. He lowered his head and sniffed the new growth. It smelled sharp and alive, the scent of life pushing up from below, refusing to stay buried. A sound cut through the steady rhythm of rain. Wings, a small flutter, clumsy with excitement. A lark, thin, fragile, landed on a stone near the stallion. Its feathers were patchy, its movements stiff from hunger, but its eyes were bright. It hopped once, then again, pecking quickly at the ground in search of anything edible. The stallion looked on without moving. He understood. The plain was not just waking for him. Another bird arrived, then two more. From far across the land came a soft chorus, hesitant chirps, calls, and rustling wings. Small voices testing the air as if asking permission to exist again. The rain answered them by falling harder. The stallion flicked his ears, feeling the new weight of water soaking deep into his coat. He shook once, sending droplets outward in a brief arc, and the world reacted. The grass bent, the mud rippled, the rain paused and resumed. Not silence, not stillness. Response. He looked at the horizon. The sky was still heavy with gray clouds, but a faint brightness pressed behind them. Not exactly light yet, but the idea of light. A breeze rolled low across the plain, warmer than before. As it moved, blades of grass swayed gently, like something stretching after a long sleep. The stallion stepped into it and felt the ground beneath him pushing back, softening, breathing. He snorted once, shaking away the last film of dust from his nostrils. His tail swished, not in annoyance, but in energy rediscovered. His legs moved with more purpose as he turned and began to trot around the water's edge. Mud splashed. Hooves thudded. The earth reacted with every step. Where he ran, the plain awakened faster. Footprints filling with rain, grass rising behind him, birds lifting into the air. His movement was a reminder that the land had not been abandoned, only waiting for a reason to begin again. And the rain, the first in too long, had finally given it permission.